The petrol you put in your car this morning is not the same petrol you were buying 4 years ago. It looks identical. It smells identical. It comes out of the same pump at the same Tesco, the same Shell, the same BP. But the chemistry changed in September 2021, and the government did not tell you what it would do to your engine. They told you it was greener. They did not mention it was corrosive. It is called E10. 10% ethanol mixed into every liter of standard unleaded in the UK. The Department for Transport estimated 600,000 vehicles on British roads were not compatible with it before they flipped the switch. They rolled it out anyway. Your fuel economy dropped. Your rubber seals started degrading. And on certain vehicles, the damage is cumulative. You are not going to notice it next week. You are going to notice it in year 3 when the mechanic hands you a bill that would not exist if the petrol had not been changed underneath you. This is the story of what ethanol does to your engine, why the government did it anyway, and the one number on the pump that most UK drivers have never even looked at. Start with the chemistry, because the chemistry is the whole story. Ethanol is an alcohol. Petrol is a hydrocarbon. Mix them and you get a fuel with one dangerous property. Ethanol absorbs water directly out of the air. Scientists call it hygroscopic. Mechanics call it a problem. Your fuel tank is not sealed against the atmosphere. It cannot be. The engine needs to draw air in as fuel drops, or the tank collapses. That air carries moisture. Every night your car sits on the driveway. Ethanol in the tank grabs water out of that air and holds it. For a few weeks, nothing visible happens. But there is a saturation point. Once the ethanol has absorbed more water than it can hold, the mixture breaks. Chemists call it phase separation. You end up with 2 layers in your tank, normal petrol on top and a layer of water and ethanol sitting at the bottom. That bottom layer is where the fuel pickup sits. Your fuel pump, a small electric motor submerged in what it assumes is petrol, starts drinking a cocktail of water and raw ethanol. The pump was never designed for that. Over time, on some vehicles, the bearings corrode and the pump fails. Replacement cost at a UK garage? Between $380 and $900, because on most modern cars, the pump sits inside the tank, and the tank has to come out to reach it. And then there is the tank itself. Water sitting at the bottom of a steel fuel tank does what water does to steel. It rusts it, slowly from the inside out, where no MOT inspection will catch it. By the time rust flakes start clogging your fuel filter, the tank is already compromised. On a 10-year-old car, that is often the moment the mechanic tells you it is not worth fixing. That is how a fuel change becomes a write-off. If you have ever noticed your car hesitating on the first crank of a damp morning, that half-second stutter where the engine catches, loses it, catches again, that is phase-separated fuel passing through your injectors. Your engine is trying to burn water. It cannot. The ECU compensates, the stutter passes, and you drive off thinking nothing of it. But every one of those stutters is a signal. Next time you are at the pump, look at the E10 sticker. It does not say fuel. It says contains up to 10% ethanol. That is your warning. Most drivers ignore it until the check engine light comes on. But the corrosion is only half the con. The part that affects every driver in the UK, even the ones with a brand new car, is what E10 does to your fuel economy. Ethanol has roughly 2/3 the energy density of pure petrol. That is not an opinion. A liter of petrol contains about 34.8 megajoules of energy. A liter of ethanol contains about 24. Mix 10% ethanol into 90% petrol, and your fuel loses around 3% of its energy content per liter before you even put it in the tank. Less energy per liter means your engine burns more of it to do the same work. Your consumption rises. It is measurable on the trip computer from the first tank. In parts of the US, particularly rural and marine areas, ethanol-free petrol, called E0, is still sold at dedicated pumps for boats, classic cars, and small engines. Drivers who switch back and forth consistently report a 3 to 5% fuel economy difference. That is not propaganda, that is thermodynamics. Now the maths. The average UK driver covers around 7,000 miles a year. At 40 mpg, that is roughly 790 liters of petrol. At 138 per liter, that is about 1,090 a year in fuel. The DFT's official estimate put the loss at 1 to 2%. Independent testing by What Car and Honest John found it closer to 3 or 4% on many vehicles. That is somewhere between 22 and 44 bar per driver per year. Across 30 million petrol vehicles, the annual transfer from drivers to the fuel supply chain sits in the hundreds of millions. You are paying more to put less energy in your tank. You are paying to burn water. Here is where it gets criminal. When E10 launched in September 2021, the government put up a compatibility checker on gov.uk. You typed in your make and model. It told you yes or no, simple. Except the checker was built on data supplied by the manufacturers themselves, and the manufacturers had every reason to say yes. If they said no, they were admitting their vehicle would be damaged by a fuel the government had just mandated. That is a warranty liability. That is a potential. Which super complaint? That is a conversation no car company wanted to have. So the checker said yes to nearly everything built after 2011, and the problem officially disappeared. But inside the manufacturer networks, there is a different class of document called a Technical Service Bulletin, a TSB. A TSB is how a manufacturer quietly tells its own dealer technicians about a known issue without triggering a recall. They are not indexed on gov.uk. They are locked behind dealer portals. Several post-2011 models marked as compatible on the government checker have dealer-facing bulletins flagging ethanol-related issues, fuel pressure sensor failures, fuel rail seal degradation, cold start drivability faults on certain batches. The Ford Fiesta 1.25 and 1.4 Duratec are common examples, so are certain early Vauxhall Corsas, Peugeot 107s, and a significant number of Japanese imports that were never formally tested against E10 at all. The checker does not know any of this, or rather, it knows, but it was never designed to tell you. Your car is being asked to accept a fuel it was never built for, and the paperwork proving it is locked behind a dealer login. Then there is the motorbike problem. Roughly a third of motorbikes on UK roads, especially anything pre-2015, have fuel systems that were never tested for E10. The Motorcycle Action Group raised this in the government consultation. The DFT acknowledged the concern. The rollout happened anyway. For lawnmowers, chainsaws, strimmers, and generators, the small engines sitting in millions of British garages, E10 is, in practical terms, poison. Honda's own UK documentation recommends draining the tank if the equipment will sit for more than 30 days on E10. 30 days for a petrol lawnmower. They did not ban the old petrol because it was bad. They banned it because the new petrol needed a market. Quick question before I tell you who actually profits from this. Have you noticed your fuel economy drop since September 2021? Not guessing. Actually noticed it. Drop the car and the rough MPG before and after in the comments. I want to see how widespread this is. Because I already know the official 1 to 2% figure is conservative. The comments will tell us by how much. Here is the part that should bother you most, and it is the simplest part of the whole story. Fuel suppliers in the UK are legally required to include a rising percentage of renewable content in every liter they sell. They needed a way to hit that target at the lowest possible cost. Ethanol solved it, cheaply, domestically, and with minimal infrastructure change. The fuel suppliers got compliance. The ethanol producers got a guaranteed market that did not previously exist. The policymakers got a headline number that let them say, "We mandated renewable fuel." You got the bill, in corrosion, in economy loss, in a fuel you never asked for. The carbon benefit? Independent analysis from Transport and Environment, a European research group, concluded that once you account for land use and the fuel economy loss, E10 delivers roughly 1% carbon savings versus standard petrol. Some analyses find no net saving at all. For that 1%, the UK rewired the chemistry in every petrol tank in the country. You paid more at the pump. The suppliers hit their target. The driver was never in the equation. Here is the rule every UK driver should know, and almost none of them do. Look at the pump. There are 2 petrol grades at every major UK forecourt. E10 is standard unleaded. E5 is super unleaded. It costs roughly 10 to 15 pence more per liter, and it contains a maximum of 5% ethanol instead of 10. Under UK law, the government has committed to keeping E5 available as a protection grade for at least 5 years, a protection specifically introduced because they knew E10 would damage vehicles. If you own a petrol car registered before 2011, a classic car, a motorbike older than about 10 years, or any vehicle you plan to leave standing for more than a month, use E5 Super. On a typical fill, E5 costs around £5 to £7 more than E10. Against a fuel system repair that starts at £600 and climbs past £2,000, E5 pays for itself many times over. E5 is not premium petrol. It is the petrol you used to get as standard, now sold at a premium because they changed what standard means. The thing about planned obsolescence is that it usually happens inside a single product. The battery dies, the firmware locks, the machine fails. This is different. This is a policy change that turned every petrol engine in the UK into a product with a slightly shorter lifespan, a slightly worse efficiency number, and a slightly higher running cost, all at once, without asking you. Under the Consumer Rights Act 2015, you have the right to a product that is of satisfactory quality and fit for purpose. Fuel is a product. Fuel that degrades your fuel system over time is not fit for purpose. Fuel that delivers measurably less energy per liter than the fuel it replaced, without that information being clearly displayed on the pump, is not of satisfactory quality. Nobody is going to sue the government on your behalf, but you can refuse to buy the product. Use the E5 pump. Read your owner's manual, not the gov.uk checker. Keep your tank full if you are not driving often. Drain your lawnmower before winter, and the next time a politician tells you a change is for your benefit, ask who built the supply chain and who profits from the rollout, because it is almost never the person standing at the pump. If you have ever looked at your fuel gauge and thought, I am going through this faster than I used to, you were right. It was not your driving. It was not your car getting older. It was the petrol getting weaker, and nobody told you. If this is the first time you are realizing this, subscribe, because this is not just fuel, it is everything you are buying. The fuel industry is the pilot program. The same logic, change the standard underneath the consumer, make it worse, call it progress. Pass the cost to the person who has no choice, is already running inside your home heating, your boiler, and your car's battery software. And some of it is worse than this.